Hi, everyone, and welcome to my April 2020 interview series with women leaders. I'm Emily Wishall of Wishall Wellness. I'm a certified welfare and embodiment coach. And today, particularly excited to bring to you what I hope will be a really valuable conversation, particularly what we're in the midst of in our world right now. Bringing to you a dear friend of mine, Kerry Borcherding. Kerry and I first met years ago networking, but we really got to know each other about 3 years ago. We carpooled 3 days back and forth to our first ever Art of Feminine Presence event. And so Kerry is with Pristine Creations. They're a company that empowers the evolution, of leaders and organizations. And Kerry brings together the worlds of neuroscience, psychology, and human behavior. She has a background, years as a psychotherapist, and also does work with animals, particularly with horses. So thank you for being here, Kerry.
I'm so excited to be here. As you brought it up about riding together 3 years ago, it feels way longer than that. Like it feels like almost a lifetime ago in some weird way.
I know. It's almost exactly 3 years ago, though.
Yeah, I know. It seems crazy to me, but.
And yeah. Kerry is a gracious guinea pig. This is my first ever Zoom interview since we can't be together right now. So I'd love to know a little bit more about Pristine Creations and just kind of your path, because you do have your background in psychotherapy, of how you got to doing this work more in the leaders in corporate world and how that all connects.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to Naropa and I was a psychotherapist for almost 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's been a really interesting journey. Actually, when I was a psychotherapist, I was doing a ton of work with animal assisted therapy, doing a lot of specifically equine assisted psychotherapy. Also started a nonprofit called Hope Held by a Horse with another woman, Diane Chafee, and ran that for 7 years. And so it's been a really interesting journey. And I think what happened was I really started wanting to do more collaborative work. And I was just having this craving of working with more people. And I was running groups, and I really love group work and being with more people than always just sitting one-on-one with clients. And so that led me more to really looking for somebody to collaborate with. And I actually was speaking at an Art of Feminine, it was one of Rachel Jane's events.
And Rachel is the creator of the Art of Feminine Presence.
Yeah, sorry. Mm-hmm. And I forgot that other people are listening. And so I was on stage and I met Steven, who is now my business partner. And we both went with this intention of finding somebody to work with. And we started talking and instantly felt like we had a similar mission. And he has worked in corporate. He's been an serial entrepreneur his whole life, pretty much since he was maybe 15 even.
Wow.
And mostly worked in corporate, but was the CEO of large manufacturing companies and aerospace companies. And that was so not my background. My background is very much working with solopreneurs and in that kind of emotional wellness space. Mm-hmm. And so it was sort of this beautiful match of being able to come together. And I really have this deep desire about leadership and business, and how do we start evolving business and leadership to come to a new place. So it's not so much, in a lot of organizations, it's very much a system of blaming and pointing the finger and goal setting, and there's not a ton of emotional connection. And that is my specialty. And so coming together and really trying to change the business paradigm and helping leaders really evolve and step into their own power and connect in a really deep way.
I love that. And I so resonate with that work. And I appreciate how you shared too your intention of, shifting that sphere of leadership within business, right? From the blame pointing to also more like this idea of us evolving together and shifting that paradigm. And holiness, like what a time to be shifting paradigms, because
exactly,
our world is asking us to
yeah.
do.
Yeah, we are definitely in the midst of really being asked to evolve. And in many ways, being asked to evolve or become extinct, whether that's literally health-wise or economically, business-wise. And I don't mean that in a in a scary way, but it's, if we don't start waking up and evolving in a lot of ways, we are going to become extinct as a planet. We are, even in this very short time of being at home, we're seeing the immense impact that we've had on the planet, and how in a very short time we are even seeing like pollution start dissolving. And
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, it's crazy. So I think it just shows that when we start, the even bigger message, when we start coming together and collaborating and staying at home or working together to solve problems from a heart-centered place, that things actually have the ability to shift quite quickly.
Yeah.
Like, who would have ever thought that people would stay at home, or that airlines would, cut their flights in half and people wouldn't travel. If we would have thought about that, a month ago, we would have been said, no way, that would never happen.
That's so true. And even just putting that, like a month ago, like early March, end of February, that was not on our periphery, and it happened real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And in this evolution, it is, it riles everything up. It amplifies everything. As I, sit and talk with friends, and, it's like putting a magnifying glass on your life and amplifying all the things that are not working in your life, as well as amplifying the things that you want more of. And that can be a really great thing. And for many, it's really freaking scary. And it's creating a lot of fear and a lot of lack and scarcity. And I'm seeing so many questions like flying around on the internet around, what are you the most fearful of, and what is your biggest challenge, and how are businesses going to survive, or what are you going to do to change your business immediately so that it doesn't die? And it's like, just even feel the energy of those types.
Me out. Just having you said that, I'm like, whoa, like,
yeah, it's so intense, and it actually creates even more of the survival paradigm of fear, and going up into your head of like, oh shit, I'm not doing anything. And if I'm at home, they're saying if I don't do something at home, then I'm a loser if I'm not creating something new. Or right? It's just so much pressure.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I know, but I also so I so agree with that. And I know myself, I felt so. Probably, we're filming this early April. It's going to be released like towards the end of the month. But so as of now, as filming this, I closed my rolfing practice about 3 weeks ago, which for me is my primary income source, is that hands-on body work. And I'm not able to do that right now. And I most definitely was, at least for a week, in this like fear, and I was in waves of it. It wasn't like I was continuously, but in this fearful scarcity place. I was so like upset that all of my financial plans and goals were just completely stripped away, that I had no power. Like, I felt like I had no power over any of it. And I'm grateful that I've shifted, at least where I'm at now, like over the last week, in a much different space. But like, for if somebody is feeling that still, or if we, we're all human and we go in ebbs and flows and cycles, if they catch themselves in that cycle, or if they're noticing those questions online, like what are some things that they can do to help resource themselves and feel more resourced in a time when maybe we don't really feel resourced at all?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that those questions do, as well as when we're in survival mode, is pop up into the headspace. And that is that's when we're, thinking of what's going to happen in the future. And we're making up all of these stories that we have no idea if they're going to come true. And they're just stories. And our reality is changing so quickly, but that creates an even larger gap in our reality of when we start making up these stories in the future that we have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, like you said, we're recording right now at the beginning of April, and in 2 weeks, it will be completely different, our reality.
Every day is so different. Yeah.
Yeah. Changing so rapidly.
At a really rapid rate.
So first I would say, see if you can take some breaths and just drop back into your body. And I'm going to give you just one thing that you can do. And especially with the lack of connection and the lack of touch and the lack of like actual physical contact that we're having with people. And some, you know, if you live with somebody at home, it might be a little better, but there's a lot of people that are fairly alone right now. So just one piece just to help get you back into your body is to literally just hold yourself. So placing one hand on your heart space and one hand kind of on your lower belly. And just taking some breaths into your hands and just feeling the contact that you have just with yourself. Especially taking breaths into your heart space and into your lower belly and feeling your hands kind of gently rise and fall. Because we forget how much just holding is important, and physical contact is important to our nervous system, for the calming of our nervous system.
I love that idea too, just holding yourself.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt my nervous system down regulate.
Yeah.
Which, you know, just to speak to all of our own health and well-being, if we are finding ourselves most of the time more in that tendency towards that fear, scarcity mindset that Kerry's talking about, or in that head bubble, worrying about the future, worrying about this, that creates our sympathetic nervous system's on high alert, right? So we're in this kind of state of arousal, of fear, which if we want to keep our immunity up,
yes,
it's so important to keep those cortisol levels lower, to keep that stress lower, not to suppress it down and not feel the fear, not feel the scarcity. Very different than that, but allowing yourself, just like this practice, right? That just helped downregulate it so I could actually be in a space where maybe I feel more resourced to feel the fear, the scariness, or whatever is coming up, the sadness. Yeah. There's been so much sadness I've been feeling for myself, for the world, for my loved ones. So yeah.
Absolutely. And it just, when we get to come back to ourselves and into the body and into the inner world first, without, you know, letting the external world impact us so much, we lose, when you're in survival mode, you lose any kind of decision making, you lose any contact with the frontal cortex that's making kind of, you know, advised decision making. You're just in that like lower part of the brain that's just wanting to react to everything versus actually kind of looking through a lens of clarity. And so it's exactly what you said. I think there's a lot of unfortunate information going around, you know, just be positive, just, you know, don't feel the fear, don't feel the scarcity. You know, there are people that are losing jobs and losing money and have every reason to feel all of those things.
There's a lot of sucky things happening.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, it is a crisis that is happening. But if you can keep remembering to come back into the body, just to resource yourself as much as possible, that is going to at least give you the ability to not be in that really reactive state where, like you said, you are more potentially going to get sick because you're losing immunity and we making maybe decisions that aren't great.
Yeah, we lose the perspective and perception.
Yeah. So one thing you can do is just not watch the news as much.
I unplugged this weekend.
Yeah.
Even from social media, and it was so good.
Yes.
And then I tuned it back in this morning and, you know, listened to my segment, turned it off.
Yeah. Well, it's a great question just to ask yourself, you know, what news should I be watching? Like really listen to your inner voice, you know, just don't follow the masses, but for you personally, what's best for you? What news sources should I listen to? Should I even listen to it? Should I listen to friends? Is that better? But ask yourself, what is, you know, how many hours a day should I listen for me? What would feel good? What would feel right? So that you can be informed, but not overwhelmed.
Of connecting.
Exactly.
Like we just did. Yeah.
Yeah. And then once you're in that place, just my second piece is to come back to those questions. Like before, I was saying many of the questions that are being asked are really like activating and triggering questions. And sometimes you can just change the question and ask better questions. So I want to give you a few examples of questions, and if you have a pen, you can write them down and kind of go back and answer them later. But even just if you're watching, as you're watching, just listen to the question and notice what happens just as you're hearing those questions. Notice what happens to your own emotional body and to your own frequency just by asking these types of questions versus more of the fear activating questions that a lot of people are asking right now. So what is one thing that you want to continue doing in your life right now that brings you joy? What is something that you want to stop doing that potentially hasn't been bringing you joy, or that you have just been doing out of habit? What's something that you want to start doing? Maybe something new, something that before you didn't have time to do. There's a lot of parents at home maybe doing art with their kids or cooking classes, or just that leads to, is there something that you just want to learn? Something new you want to learn that would feel good and exciting? What nourishes you emotionally and spiritually? What's something that you've been really attached to, whether that's in your life or your business, that feels hard to let go of? So Emma, I'm curious what you noticed just with those questions.
I loved those questions. I think most of them brought like a smile to my face. Well, one, I love that first question is, what is one thing you want to do that brings you joy? And I started kind of laughing internally because I had several things come to mind, but there are things that I've been doing on a daily basis that usually in my life I'm not able to do. Well, seemingly, this is another thing.
Right.
The time is on our side right now.
Yeah.
Time is on our side, and I feel as those questions remind me that, and that gives a really great depth of something to be grateful for. Very easily, like, whoa, for the first time, like, time is really on my side. When often it's always like, I don't have enough time. Life is so full. My schedule is so full, and all of that.
Which is such an interesting story that we often tell ourselves.
Like, and a story that I'm realizing now that all of a sudden everything is slowed down and that we're just staying home, how untrue that story is for me. It doesn't have to be my story.
Right.
I would not have seen that. I didn't see that at the rate that I was living my life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I can't remember where I saw somebody say this the other day, and I've heard it before, but to interrupt a habit is to make it visible. And
it's to make it visible?
It's to make it visible. To interrupt a habit is to make it visible.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, could not be, we're being basically forced to see our invisible habits by, because our lives are being interrupted, whether it's not being at work or working from home or whatever your new reality is for yourself. But it is literally, amplifying those habits that we were in and those stories that we created, whatever those were, and saying, is that really true? Like, is that really what you want your life to, is that really what your life has to look like? Whatever the story is, but it's really an opportunity to ask the deeper questions.
It is. And the deeper questions being just what is it that you're really wanting and desiring, or what brings you joy and nourishment.
Yeah. Who are you and why are you here? And what are you really here to create? Yeah.
And having space with those questions. There doesn't have to be an answer right away.
No.
Sit with them on a walk. And also, like, this doesn't have to be our most creative, productive time.
No.
We're in a crisis and we're all experiencing different levels of trauma. And so it's okay to rest. It's okay to have extra naps. And I feel those questions, are so much more an invitation. And maybe too, an invitation would be if people or myself, when I'm going to try and work too, if I'm noticing questions, like if I'm scrolling through Facebook or seeing something more related to like, what has you most scared, or how are you going to survive, and all of that, using that as my, we'll see, this is my intention. Yeah. Using that as a trigger to see how could I reframe that question and ask.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, to just start noticing how much that's out there.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you say that. Yeah, I mean, the questions are only an invitation. I think there's a lot going on out there that's saying if you're not at home doing something, then you're just have a lack of discipline, or that's like the latest one that I've heard.
No.
And what's interesting that I'm noticing is, a lot of people getting on Zooms and having tons of happy hours with other people. And although I think that's great, and people have to do what they have to do, it also sometimes feels like one addiction to another. It's like, oh, we can't be together, so I need to replace it with something. But what if the message, what if the invitation of all this is really to go internal and to have space and quiet and time with yourself versus like the constant busyness that most of us are very used to in our lives.
I completely agree. And I am noticing in myself, because I tend to have a very full schedule when we're living our normal life. And I noticed over this past week with the Zoom happy hours and the FaceTimes with friends, and I am loving all these phone conversations and connections that I'm not often having, but wow, it's taken a lot of my time.
I know. I actually have had like more happy hours and connection. I'm a super introvert, and I've noticed like I'm doing more now at night than I have been when this wasn't happening. I'm like, whoa, I need to stop that. Like not because I should, but just because I really am actually wanting to have this time to just be and not feel like I have to be doing something to keep busy or fill my time or be on board or whatever it is.
Totally. One little quick thought I want to bring is that a book I'm reading, the Magdalene manuscript, I read it 2 years ago, and it sits in my bedroom on a shelf, and for whatever reason last week I kept being called to pick it back up, so I picked it back up.
What is it called?
The Magdalene manuscript. But just the end of it, a brief little thing that's in relationship to what we're talking about. And this book was written about 20 years ago. And this concept is up in a lot, but he's just talking about the yin and the yang in the world and how we're out of balance. And especially our country and this really young, like always going, you're only worthy if you're productive. If your schedule isn't full, there's something wrong with you, or you're not wanted, or you're not enough. And how that imbalance is showing up in Mother Earth. And he even says, like, there's going to be a crisis that's going to happen to stop this. And so it was I'm getting chills reading it. Like, so interesting, because I read that book 2 years ago. And then I, for whatever reason, was like, I need to reread it. And reading that was like, whoa, like that's what's happening. And I need this reminder so much for myself, because I can get, I was even just filling my calendar.
Yeah, well, the success matrix that we have is very much about goal setting and getting stuff done and making money.
If we go into our own cave normal, our own cave, and then those questions you asked and invited us to answer. Yeah. So, thank you, Kerry.
Yeah, I love talking about this, and it just feels like a really ripe time to. That it might feel like shit right now, but there's definitely something on the other side. I feel very, I don't know. I just have a really deep knowing, at least for myself, that there is beauty on the other side.
Yeah. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you kind of want to share about like Pristine Creations and how this relates to the work you're doing within organizations and corporations and leadership?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just keeps coming back to the work as business consulting that we're doing through Pristine Creations is really about changing that business paradigm so that it's really about evolving leaders and spending more time not just on the goal setting, although actions of course are important, but there is a greater importance of the inner world that has to happen, like an evolution within our inner world of intimacy and love and connection, that if we start, all businesses started interplaying like that, where we were really using business as a force for good versus power and money, that there could be so much more done in the world that that would be pristine. It's really about creating pristine creations in the world that are supporting the planet and humanity.
Beautiful. And that so relates to everything we talked about in this paradigm, whether it be the business paradigm, your personal life, relationships.
Yeah. I mean, to me, there's no real separation between personal and business. I think how we do our personal life is how we do our business, and vice versa. So
I agree.
Yeah.
How can we, if people want to learn more about your work and stay connected with you, where can we find more information?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, which is pristinecreations.co. And we have a podcast that's going to be coming out shortly called Evolutionary Leadership Radio. And
awesome.
I'm so super excited. So there's going to be, that's really about interviewing evolutionary leaders who are also wanting to really change the paradigm of business and how they're implementing some of those practices in their companies.
Awesome.
Organizations. And we have a monthly event called CreateX that's sort of on hold right now because of not being able to be in person with one another. We are trying it online. We'll see how that goes, but Stephen and I are definitely in person. We want the high touch piece, and but that happens the second Thursday of every month. It's called CreateX Lab. And
if you're local, I highly recommend.
If you're local,
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and that's about bringing a question or challenge you have in your business and using the whole group to source information and get support around that question. And that takes place in Golden, Colorado. What else? Those are the two main things.
Those are great.
So those events are on our website.
Yeah, so I'll link to the website, and then is the podcast on the website as well?
It will be as soon as it launches. Yeah,
perfect.
There's like a holding page there waiting for it.
Awesome. I look forward to listening to that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I love to end with just this question. A really important piece to me in my own life, in my business, and my work, and I really believe for leadership, is leading in integrity. And there's a quote from Gandhi that he defined integrity as when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in alignment. And so I just love to ask you, and if you wouldn't mind sharing an example of how in your daily life you live in integrity.
I love that question. It actually is something that I have personally been, it's been like really an awareness practice lately. And the way that I look at integrity is through three categories: integrity with time, integrity with truth, and integrity with promises. So being on time, wherever you say you're going to be, show up on time, as well as holding to time on your calendar. If you're putting things on your calendar at certain times, even if it's things in your work schedule, with like not meetings, but things that you're doing for your business, holding to those, because every time you don't, then you're leaking energy. It not only has an impact on you, but it has an impact on others. There is always a ripple effect to any time that you're not in integrity. So integrity to truth is not just telling the truth, not being, not lying, but it's also telling yourself the truth. So we have so many kind of scripts playing in our mind all the time, whether it's I'm not good enough, or maybe you are not in a great relationship, but you keep kind of lying to yourself like, oh, things are going to get better. I'm just going to stick it out. So just being really, really clear and honest with yourself about what is truly working in your life and what is not. And then the final is integrity to promises. So if you make a commitment, if you make a promise to yourself, that you hold true to that promise, or if you make a promise to somebody else, because every time you're not, it is having a ripple effect. You are also attracting other people who are not in integrity into your life or into your business. And there's usually consequences there. And the more out of integrity you are, the higher the consequences, whether that's health or wellness, so that, I think it's a really big piece. And as I started looking at it, I was actually, to be honest, a little bit surprised at how often I'm actually not in integrity when I really look at the very specific pieces. I don't lie, but the smaller pieces of the things that I tell myself that might not be true, or so it's definitely an interesting.
I love how you broke that up into the 3 avenues: the time, truth, and promises. And I was sitting there listening. I was like, wow, like I'm out of integrity a lot more than I think. Like I tend to, not in my work life, but in my personal life, I tend to almost always run 5 minutes late. I don't know why. I try really hard, but I'm always almost to a T 5 minutes late. So I'm like, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And then what is the consequence of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the impact on somebody else.
Yeah. Or what is
waiting for you, or yeah.
So something to sit with.
Yeah. So anyway, just something interesting to track in your life. You might be surprised.
Yeah. I like how you define that system.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kerry, for your time and for sharing your wisdom. And I really appreciate those questions. I think I'll type some of them out, underneath this video too, just for people to easily access, to journal, to sit with, to meditate, walk with.
Perfect.
They feel like a really beautiful invitation right now for us to have an opportunity to deepen our own connection to self, deepen our own connection to others, even if we're not physically in contact, and also deepen our connection with the collective and the environment.
Absolutely.
In ways that are true for us as individuals.
Yep. Yep. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I know this is not the norm, so it's interesting to watch how things are quickly changing even around things like this.
Doing it. We're just zooming and
yep, life goes on. Exactly. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And I'll link Kerry's website and everything below so you can stay in contact with her. Take care.